Hello, my name's Tom Wilson. I work with Hyper63, and today I'm going to do a tour of the Hyper63 API and the services. Um, we're going to do this on Gitpod, so that should be fun. We'll launch Gitpod here, and Gitpod is an online service where you can run your editor. Uh, let's see, log in. And it's great for doing code reviews and pull requests and things like that, so you don't have to change what you're doing. You just pop it up in Gitpod and go. Um, it gives you an experience that's very similar to VS Code. I mean, it actually uses the core pieces of VS Code, so you can pretty much do anything in Gitpod that you can. And okay, so we've got our repository. First thing we're going to do is use yarn and install any dependencies. I think there's just a couple. And in this layout, you will see an index.js file. That's the file that we'll be working with. And then the README will be our tour guide. And we'll use that for reference. So I'll be going back and forth between the index.js and the README. Actually, let's see if we can put them side by side. Oops, we can do that. That would be kind of cool. We could do that. And then at the bottom will be our terminal, and we'll run a command on there that will, every time we save, it'll rerun our code. So we should be able to see stuff. Let's see. Can't remember how to do split screens. There we go. I think that will work. Yeah. And now that should close that. So we've got our little editor here, and we've got our guide, our tour guide here. Let's give it some more space. Um, and to go through this, you need a token. Um, so you go to play.hyper63.com. If you open that in your browser, you can enter in your email address and get a token. And I've already got a token, so I'm going to grab that. And the token's good for 30 days to play around with Hyper63. And basically, it'll be good for this demo. So once you have your token, what you want to do is export and just call it Hyper63 underscore token and your name. So in your terminal, you would just type export hyper63 underscore token, and then take your token and just paste it like that. And now if you do echo dollar hyper 63 token, we should get our token. So cool. Um, and you can see it being pulled in here. The other thing to note is we're using just fetch to call the API. It's a REST API, and what I did is create this little request file that kind of wraps it fetch into some sugar so that we can make our calls easier. And if you want to check out that file, it's just right here. And basically, it's just wrapping. Let's see, did it open? Oh, it opened over here. Yeah, it's just wrapping the fetch command and using Vercel fetch to wrap node fetch, which gives you like request timeout handling, DNS stuff, all that stuff. Then it just kind of creates the headers, sticks the token in, creates options. So basically, the create options will take a method and body. It'll just do the stringify there. And then basically give us a get, post, put, and delete. So pretty simple stuff. And that'll make our tour go where we won't have to do so much typing, but we will have to do some typing. So now that we've got that, we'll run yarn again, make sure we got all of our dependencies up to date, and then we'll run yarn play. And yarn play is just going to run nodemon, and then every time we change this file, it will print out. So if we made a change here and say, woo, like that, and we save it, then it's going to just run and show us what's going on here. So this console log will just log out what's going on. And then you'll have this start sandbox and end sandbox. So that's where we'll put our code. And throughout the tour, you'll see a note that says, save. And you just save your index file, and you should see the results. And then there will be an expected output. And then you'll see another note, kind of clear the sandbox. And then will just remove all the code that you wrote here. And that'll really allow us to move through this tour, and you can kind of follow along and get an idea of what's going on. So the first thing we need to do, we've got three services. We've got data, we've got cache, and we've got search. Data is like a common API to databases, so it allows you to create databases, delete databases, store documents, get documents, update documents, remove documents, query documents. So that's what we're going to demo in our data tour. We're just going to do a couple of things, and I set up some documents ahead of time, a couple of movies. Feel free to make your own movie documents or create your own documents, and then we're going to give this app a special name. So in our case, we're going to let's just do demo 25, right? Let's call that 25 and call it movies. So we're going to create a database called demo25-movies. And what I encourage you to do is, and I'll delete the database when I'm done, but when you go through this, just come up with some unique name here that you kind of can reference, and that way you won't collide with someone else if they're doing the tutorial and happen to be creating the sandbox and stuff, and all will be well. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a database. So now that we've got our app, we're going to just do res equals await, and everything is a promise, right? So everything will come back as a promise. So star dot put, and then we'll say slash data, and we'll just add our app. So that's all we need to create the database. So if we run that by saving the file, we should get OK true. And we created a database. Now, if we want to remove that database, we just do a delete and save and OK true. We just deleted that database. It's that simple. In the future, because this is so simple, it can often happen by accident. So in the future, we're going to probably add a confirm flag equal true, like that. And that will, make sure that you're intentionally trying to delete the database. And if you don't put that confirm flag in, then it won't delete. And that's kind of like the, the internet alert kind of thing. So that's deleting, but let's add a document. So now we can add a document. So we'll just clear everything out of the sandbox here. And what I'm just going to do is edit because that's quicker. But to add a document, we'll post. And then as a second argument to this command, we will supply our document. And we've got Ghostbusters up here, so we'll just use that. And we'll hit save. And you know, what we forgot to do is we have to create the database again because we just deleted it. So that's gonna error out. So let's go ahead and create the database. Okay. Yeah. So database is not initialized. So let's go ahead and create the database, and then we'll add our document. So let's save, and we created the database and add our document. One note is that this command can be run many times. So you can create the database, and if it doesn't exist, it'll create it. But if it already exists, it'll just skip over it. So if I, you know, save it again, it's going to do the same thing. Now this one won't be able to be run multiple times. So when you add a document, if you want to update it, you'll need to do a put, and that's why it's coming up with an update conflict, because you've already added the document, or we've already added the document. So that's how you add a document. Pretty simple. To get a document, we just use get. So we'll do res equals await get and data and our app name, and then the ID, right? So we can just pull the ID from this Ghostbusters object. So there's not a chance of making a typo. And hit save, and we get our document back, which is pretty cool. If we want to update the document, right? So let's add a poster to the document. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll just say Ghostbusters equals, and then we'll just destructure the object and then put Ghostbusters in there. So we'll just explode or spread Ghostbusters object in this new object, and then we'll just include poster Ghostbusters .jpg, right? And then we will do a put, right? So we need to do a put, and in that put, it's important that we give it the app and the ID, and then finally the new document as the body. Okay. And if we save that, we get OK true. Now let's make sure that it did take the update. So let's do a get and remove our body like that. And it did. We've got our poster in there, which is pretty cool. So, you know, we added a document, we updated it, we got it. We can also delete it. And again, to delete a document, it's just delete, and that's going to delete the document. We can try to do a get, and it should say that it's missing. Yep. Cool. So that's sort of the create, read, update, and delete pattern for data. And then we can query. But before we query, what we want to do is go ahead and add some movies to our database. We can do that. Save, and that should have added them. Now we've got some stuff to query. So to query, we basically do a object kind of where clause, right? Where you basically supply an object and say, I want this property to equal this and this property to equal that. You can do like ors. You can also do greater than or less than, all that stuff. It was made popular by Mongo and it's used by several databases now. So we'll just do a post to data app query. So this query is the command that's going to say, hey, we want to run a query on your database. And then we supply a body. And to give it the select clause, we use the term selector. So we'll add selector. And then inside this, let's just query for type movie, because you could have many documents that have different types. So we can say, give us all the movies. And let's just start with that. So we save that, and then it should find all the movies. And then we can filter it even further by saying, how about year, less than 2000. If we do that, we'll just get the movies less than 2000. Or we could do greater than, and then we get the movies greater than 2000. So it's pretty straightforward, and it works really fast. You also can add indexes to make it even faster. We're not going to show that today, but if you go to the documents at hyper63 and look at the API service, you can learn more about all the query selectors that you can use and how to build indexes to make your searches stay fast over time, or your queries. So that's the data service tour. Now let's go to the cache. Cache is a place where you can store data and get it back in a key value pair object. And the advantage of this is you can store data using any kind of pattern with the keys to quickly retrieve it. You can implement patterns where you put caches on top of your database, so it acts as kind of a performance stabilizer, if you will, so that you're not just really overwhelming your database with too many reads or too many queries. And another pattern is to take search results and stuff them in the cache. So if someone calls that same search again with a given amount of time, it's just going to return the same results, and that can save a lot of time and keep your app performant, even though multiple people are using it. So caches are really powerful stuff. And you can keep like counters or collect sums and things like that, and keep them in an aggregate form so that you don't have to do that calculation every time. So to create a cache, we simply do a put. So it's await $put, and then instead of data, we use cache, and then we can give it a name, and we'll just use our app name to keep it simple, and we've created a cache. To delete a cache, we just do delete, and we deleted it. Now I'm gonna create it again just to be sure, and just like the data, I can call this method several times and it will do nothing if the cache already exists. So that's kind of creating and deleting. So let's add a key value pair. So we'll do a post, and we're going to supply it with an object, but this object has to have a couple of properties. It can't just be any object. So we have to say, here's our key, and we're going to name this key action 2012 Avengers, right? and then we'll give it a value. And in this case, we're just going to give it the Avengers object. So a key has to be a string, and the value can be any kind of JSON compliant value, which that's a number, a string, an array, or an object. And with that, we should create our key value pair object. One other note is you can also add a time to live. So you, essentially an expiration time period for cache values, and that's called TTL. So you can optionally add TTL and say 2 minutes or 2 hours or 2 days or 2 years, whatever. And what it'll do is the cache will keep that data in there. And again, you know, with caches, you can't think of it as super permanent, but because you could use a memory cache. So if something gets reset, then the memory could be flushed. So you should never trust this as permanent data. You should always have, your source of truth in a data store. But with this, you can easily say, add this and have it go away for a day, and then it will stay for like 24 hours, and then every time that goes, the cache will go away in 24 hours. That particular key and value. So that's pretty cool. Um, and you can also do some simple queries with it as well. So what we'll do is we'll add a couple more documents to the cache and just kind of name them a little differently here. Um, we'll add an Action Avengers 2012 and Action Ghostbusters 1984. So we'll add those. Let's see, we got an error. Avengers not defined. Avengers. Good. Okay. Let's see what else. It should be good. We'll see. We can always re-add, but that should be good. And then we can do a query, and we can do kind of three types of queries. We can do a starts with, where we just give it some text and then an asterisk. We can do an ends with, where we give the asterisk first and some text. Or we can do kind of a start and end, where we give it some text, then the asterisk, and then some text. So some just basic patterns. And we use the query command to do it. So we'll do res wait query, or I'm sorry, post slash cache slash app query, and we provide a query string parameter called pattern. And for this one, we'll just find all the keys that start with action. And if we save that, we get our Action Avengers, and we get we just get our Action Avenger. So something must not have added right when I did this. So let's try that again. But anyway, it's pretty cool. So you can do starts with, we could say, ends with by doing asterisk and 1984. And we'll see how that works. So let's see. Well, let me try that again. Close catch out. No, I was thinking a little bit. let's just do 2012. Yeah, store is not found. Oh, I see. So I'm not escaping these things. That's why. Okay. Template literals, right? So we need to escape, and let's save that. Okay, so now we get our Ghostbusters, and now if we run our query, cool, get Ghostbusters 1984. And if we do action, we should get to the matcher, we should get both of them. And we did. Cool. So got to update my documentation to make those backticks. So I'll do that after this. Um, cool. So that's the cache service. It's pretty straightforward. And again, it's intentionally meant to kind of be simple and easy to use so that you can kind of compose it with the data service and the search service to create some really nice patterns and take advantage of a full cache in your application. So now we'll go to the search service, and the search service is pretty cool. Again, it's designed to be very similar to the data service and the cache service, so you'll notice some of these things are the same. Like to create a search index, we will do an await, and we'll call a put, and we'll do /search, and give it our index name. The one caveat is we need to give the index some info when we create it. We need to kind of tell it what fields we want to index. So we'll give it fields, and we'll say title and year. And then optionally, we can say store these fields. So we'll say store fields, and we'll want to store the ID and title and year and genres. Okay. And that should create our search index. And again, to delete it, you would just do delete. We won't do that now. It'll save us some time. And then we'll create some search documents. And you can do the post just like we did before. But there is an easier way. We can take, if we got a list of documents, we can do a bulk command. So that's what we'll show here is the bulk command. We'll do a post and do search app and underscore bulk. And then it just takes an array. So we'll give it an array, and we'll add Ghostbusters, Groundhog Day, and Avengers, and we should get OK and results back. So that's good. Everything is added to our index. And like I said, you can do all the kind of create, read, update, and delete commands just like we showed with the data service. And you have a query command. The query command takes an object that takes a query property, and then you have your text. And this is a free text search, so the query is just a string of text that you use to search. So for example, we can do let's wait, post, search, app, and query, and we'll give it a JSON document with a query property, and we'll just say 1984. So any document that has 1984 as a year or 1984 in their title, it's gonna find, and hopefully it matches Ghostbusters, which is what we wanted, which is great. We could search for Avengers to show that it's finding based on title or year. You could have a filter, so we could say filter, and the filter um, takes an object, I believe, and then you can say year and then a matcher on the year. So we'll do 1984. So it will only find anything that's Avengers with a year 1984, and there isn't one, so it shouldn't find anything, but we'll see what happens. Yep, doesn't find anything. But if we do 2012, it should find it. So there's also a term feature, so you could say, out of these indexes that I have, I've got title and year, and I think it's term. I'll have to look at the documentation to make sure. But you could say just search on the title or just search on the field. And that's our query search functionality. It's pretty cool. And that's pretty much the tour. So we went through the data service, the search service, and the cache service. Please check it out. Hope you find this fun. And if you run into any issues, please submit them to our issues in GitHub. If you have any ideas of how we can improve this API, make it better, please join us for a chat on our discussions board. And finally, if you really like the direction of Hyper63 and where we're going with it, give us a star. Give us a star on GitHub or mention us in a tweet. And if you have any questions or would like to talk further about this project, please reach out to us via Twitter or via email, tom@hyper63.com, and or on GitHub. We'll love to hear from you. Thanks again for your time. Hope you have a great day.